Um, so I'm not talking about new research. I'm going to be talking about ways of sharing the excitement of researching with new people. What personally I've really found interesting about Humphry Repton is his canniness, his understanding of how to win hearts and minds and interest people, be it new money or old money, one end of the country or the other. And so at the Gardens Trust, our nod to his skills has been with a Heritage Lottery Fund project, and I am incredibly grateful to every player who ever buys a lottery ticket for making this possible, because it wouldn't have been otherwise. We've had a lottery project called Sharing Repton, Historic Landscapes for All. It's only very slightly about Repton. It's much more broadly about the historic landscapes for all. And we have used the Repton year as a hook to pilot 5 activities which have been in 5 different Repton landscapes across the country, working with local volunteers and professionals in those areas. And each of those pilots have been accessible, achievable ways of reaching new audiences. One of those pilots is based at Repton's landscape of Warley Woods in the Black Country. And this beautiful, beautiful picture here is taken by a guy called Simon Rea, who won the International Garden Photographer of the Year Repton Division competition with this picture of Warley Woods, which is called Last Rays of Sun. So Repton at Warley Woods, in 1795, he produced a red book for Samuel Galton, who is interesting because he was a gunmaker and a Quaker and got caught up in the slave trade arguments and all that kind of thing. And we're running there a pilot project called the Warley Woods Big Red Book Project. That title was devised by a lady called Suzanne Carter, who is the professional engagement consultant that we've hired to make sure that we really do this pilot right. And she has been helped by David Whitehead of the Hereford and Worcester Gardens Trust, Kate Slade, who is a trustee at the Warley Woods Trust, and the Gardens Trust volunteers Neil McLean and Gary Webb. By day, Neil McLean is I'm going to say tree surgeon because I can't pronounce that posher word, and Gary Webb, who works at Compton Verney. And the task that they and Suzanne were given was to devise and pilot a research and recording project that would attract and train 15 to 20 people who were completely new to garden history. So none of you in this room, people we haven't met before. And to train them through 4 workshops, which the first would be reading a landscape on the ground. The second is going to an archive and learning how to use the archive. The third is learning how to interpret the information you've found and to write that up into a statement of significance, which is used for conservation, and also a leaflet that in turn will be interesting to other people who currently have no interest and know nothing about garden history. And finally, to present that material in a public presentation, so a garden history lecture or something like that. And the outcomes, of course, would be that we'd have a new team of volunteers, we'd have the leaflet, we'd know a lot more about Warley Woods, but also specifically we would have piloted this model for attracting and training new groups of volunteers. So lovely Suzanne came up with this idea, which I thoroughly believe to be the best I had ever heard, which was the way to attract new people would be to make contact with a local school. So she made contact with Abbey Primary School, which is adjacent to Warley Woods, and that by setting up a project that did some work with the children, the parents, carers, families of the children would be attracted to get involved as well. And I loved this idea because it's really sort of multi-generational. It did work to an extent. We got some parents and some grandparents from the school, and it also attracted people from the community who didn't have anything to do with the school, but kind of recognised through the way we'd set up the project that this was something that was really accessible and outward-looking and really for people like them. And I was also delighted because Suzanne was effectively offering us 2 projects for the price of 1. I'd only wanted those 15 to 20 adults, and we'd also got the school. So today I'm just going to talk to you about the first workshop that we've run. So the first workshop, in the morning, we were inside, and David Whitehouse talked us through, in a traditional presentation, who Repton was, the work that he'd done at Warley Woods, and the background. And then Gary Webb did this brilliant thing of producing loads and loads of maps and research for Compton Verney, where he works, and was able to talk, because he's a practical hands-on landscape manager, about how the research was really useful to him in his everyday work at Compton Verney. So then participants were kind of motivated and had the background and understood why they were there. It's not just for fun, although it is fun, there's also a practical purpose. And then we went out into the landscape. We were armed with the red books. We decided that trees would be a really useful way in. So we spent lots of time looking at trees. Is that old? Is that new? And then one guy pointed to this kind of mound in the ground, and he said, I've always come here, and I've always been told by locals that this is the kind of earthworks of an old sheep pen. And for a while, us clever garden historians said, oh, yes, that sounds about right. You are incredibly clever. And then I can't remember whether it was Gary or David piped up and said, actually, I'm not sure that is right. I think it's mounding to protect the young trees that Repton would have planted. And that was really great, because that demonstrated to the participants that genuinely garden history is a new subject. So you can come to it completely fresh as a new researcher and genuinely be finding out new things. So I think that gave them a lot of confidence to see that there weren't garden historians there who knew all the answers and pretended they didn't so they could have fun. We did really need them to work their way through it. And we did a lot of walking around, and we had the Repton Red Book views, and trying to work out what views were still there and how they'd changed and had they been implemented or not. And I ought to say thanks to the Sandwell Community History and Archive Service for the Red Book pictures. And also that archive service has been incredibly helpful in supporting us with the training. And it was just really lovely. We had these adults who had a really great time, and I'd forgotten how lovely it is to have your first walk around a historic landscape when you only ever thought it was where you walked your dog. And the kind of joy that was bouncing off them really kind of invigorated me through the autumn. So they had a great time. We've now run the second day, and the group has grown by word of mouth, which is real proof that the first day worked. And by the end of this, we genuinely are going to have a new and trained team of volunteers. So if anybody is in the West Midlands and would like to steal this team of volunteers that we'll have trained up, let me know. But also, the critical thing about our HLF project is it runs to the end of 2019, so we've got a whole year to go. And one of the things we're going to be doing in that year is that making sure that all of the experience and materials of these pilots, including this research and recording project, are going to be really ruthlessly harvested, so that if you fancied having a go at recruiting new volunteers using this kind of model, you won't have to start from scratch at all. We can tell you the things that went wrong and the things that went right. You'll be able to reuse the posters if you want to. We can show you the social media trail of how we built the interest. You can use our risk assessment, our method statements, all the activity handouts and all of the rest of it. So do you remember I said that we were linking with the school? Do you want to hear how that went? That sort of bonus extra one that I thought I was getting for free. Well, a week before we were delivering that first workshop, I got a call from Suzanne saying, oh, Linden, we were going to have some children from the school, and that's how we've got the adults' attention. And I said, yes, how's that going? And she said, well, the school are really, really, really keen. they said, would you mind if we had the whole of year 6? I love working with children, so I said, well, I'm sure that's fine. How big is their year 6? 90 children. Here are the children, bless them, literally running to crush us under their enthusiastic feet. So in the morning, we delivered that workshop for adults. What we'd promised the HLF we would do, it worked brilliantly, loved the adults, had a really great time. Then we had a quick running sandwich and went to meet these 90 children that we were also going to train to be garden history researchers. So here's Suzanne holding the big red book, and over the autumn the school children, as their research, are building their own Warley Woods big red book. So David, Gary and I, we split ourselves into different locations in Warley Woods, and the teachers then had the children in groups, and they ran from one location to the other. So we followed a very similar model as we did with the adults. First of all, Gary talked them through the ages of trees, and we counted tree rings and that kind of thing, and the kids asked loads of really random questions that we weren't expecting, but that was quite good. It kept us on our toes. We did a session on talking about how you can improve the landscape. You might have thought this was here forever, but it wasn't, so there's that garden history concept. And we stood them in front of different views and asked them how they would improve it or how they thought it might have been improved. Here is David Whitehead. He's a really serious garden historian. He stood up there in front of 3 groups of 30 children. He showed them the red books. He gave them the proper garden history talk, and they gave him a real run for his money, asking serious questions back. It was absolutely fantastic. And then we talked to them about garden buildings. At Warley Woods, there was once a temple, and it got lost over the years. So we showed them the red book picture of the lost temple, and the kids really loved that. They were kind of trying to work out where it was. It was real kind of core, I'm going to tell my mum there was a building here kind of thing. So that was really great. They were proper garden detectives. And then we got them working to use Lego to design their own garden buildings, which inevitably all included swimming pools and air conditioning and all that kind of stuff. We were proper knackered at this point, but it was so exciting having 90 new garden history researchers under the age of 11. That's me in my polyester Repton tailcoat, getting these kids to look at the pictures of the landscape, and do you think that tree is this tree, and do you think this slope is that slope? And we also got them to stage some conversations between the client Samuel Galton and Humphry Repton based on am I going to hire you, am I not, with the kids saying things like, how would you rate yourself, Humphry, out of 10, 7 or 8? Which was really great. And it was just so lovely because both the adult I think all of us in this room have come primarily from a history background or a garden background or something like that, whereas the adults and the children all came because they loved the site. So in some ways, they knew the site so much better than us already, but then we had other things that we could tell them. So it was a real sort of sharing of information. And this amazing lady here, she was one of the participants who came in the morning. So she was a grandma of a child at the school, attracted to the project because she quite liked the idea of working alongside her grandchild. So she learnt about garden history for the first time in the morning. In the afternoon, Gary Webb, on whom we were relying heavily, had to rush off to do his school run because his wife was sick. So this lady stepped forward and then trained 90 children in how to assess the age of trees. So that was real training in action. It's fantastic. So really, that's our research adventure we've been on this autumn. I've worked in the wonderful world of garden history, I'm shocked to realise, for 20 years this year. There's always been so much to learn, and days like this are really, really exciting, and I just love it. But hand on heart, in those 20 years, nothing has been so exciting for me as sharing garden history and the excitement of researching with new people. It's like that first season of being a garden history researcher yourself, but over again 20 years later. So I'm just sort of really recommending it to you all. But I'm not going to beat about the bush. I'm conscious that I've got all of you captive in this room. And I'm really hoping that some of you will kind of feel the same sort of hunger that I do for reaching out to new people, either because you want to build a new team of researchers or because you want to be able to share the buzz of the research that you've got with wider audiences. And what I'm saying to you is because of this HLF project, we actually really can do this now. We've got the resources, and increasingly because of the pilots, we've got the skills. And over the next year, my job is to sort of support anyone who wants to, I'm assuming, not deliver a garden history research workshop for 90 10-year-olds. If you do, I'm there with you, but small nibbles of it. If you have a look at our website and social media, over the next year I'm going to be piling loads of stuff onto there that you can reuse. I'm just at the other end of the email. We can do events and that kind of thing together. Thank you.